Welcome to California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerantz. We are touring California. We are on a road show today. We are in Redding, California. We are in the district. I think it's the first assembly district.
It is.
Of Brian Dahle, who represents how many counties in North State?
7 full counties and part of 2, so 9 total.
And including the city of Redding.
Exactly.
Which we are in today on the Sacramento River. Buddy, I don't know what to say. I mean, this truly is God's country. And it's funny, I was teasing you before, a lot of the Democrats say that you're not such a bad guy. You bring them up here to show them about North State and what North State is and means. Tell us about those road shows and more about your district.
So my goal has been to, educate the other members on the things that we are facing in my district. And we have a lot of natural resources here. Obviously, we have the Shasta Dam, which is right here.
Which I want to talk about soon.
Shasta County, we have 2 volcanoes, Mount Lassen and Mount Shasta. So my goal is to get every member of the legislature, Senate and Assembly, to come up to my district and tour my district and see the things that we're faced with our natural resources and the things the challenges we have. Likewise, I've also offered to them that I will go to their districts. So I've been traveling to theirs, they've been coming to mine. And I think that, the opportunity to be able to get to know somebody and know their district, it's so much easier to understand when they're running legislation why they're pushing that.
Completely get it. I had the honor, I would say, because it really was a tremendous honor to be able to tour Redding a bit yesterday and wound up going to Shasta Dam. Now, we'll talk about how the water level is low in a moment. It is beautiful. There's no doubt about it. As is the Sacramento River. But let's talk about the water level at Shasta Dam. I could see, even my layman's eyes could see, that the tree line was much higher than where the water was ending. And so there's a huge gap. What's happening?
Well, obviously we're in a drought, and a 3-year drought. So normally there's springs that feed the Sacramento River up in Siskiyou County, and it's Mount Shasta, and they come in. That's the Sacramento River, and then the Fall River and the Pitt River come in also. Those are the 2 main arteries. Hat Creek, those are spring-fed rivers that feed into the lake. So they're continuing to feed into that lake, but the lake catches the high times, and when the real runoff in the spring is when we have a normal snowpack and reserves that water for later on. And so with 3 years of drought, the lake is continuing to drop down because we have to service the fish and we have to take care of the farms that rely on that water. But the dam was originally built for flood, to take care of floods.
Boy, the irony. The irony. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we had that problem? I want to talk to you about the dam in the context of Proposition 1, which will be on the ballot in November. We know that about $2.7 billion of the $7.5 billion for the water bond is dedicated to storage. And while we could spend $20.7 billion on storage, no doubt, there have been discussions about increasing the height of the dam at Shasta. What's your sense of whether, if the bond passes, which one could say looks likely, will Shasta be on that list?
It's possible, but that's going to take some that's regulated by the federal government.
I learned that.
I really think that the bond money will go to Sites Reservoir, which is in Tehama County, which was downstream from us right here. And that is a project that has bipartisanship support and environmentalists like it because it actually doesn't put a dam on the river. It takes the water off the river, pumps it off, and puts it into an off-stream storage site. And that creates about 1.6 million acre-feet of water. So when we have, in the years we have Shasta full and we're able to have extra water, we'll be able to fill that up. And it creates 500,000 acres of new water. And we need to be able to do what the original people who came to California did, was build dams and build the infrastructure, which we're very much lacking now.
How do you do it in such a way so all interests are satisfied? I mean, it is quite amazing that we are talking about dams in a bipartisan fashion. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, you wouldn't hear a single Democrat talk about dams, but it is clear that it's part of the solution. There's no doubt about it. Storage is, above ground storage is part of the solution.
Right. Well, I've been talking about storage also in our watersheds. Above the dams, existing dams, we have the forest. And I know you and I have talked many times about too many trees out there taking up water. But the ability to pass a water bond right now is critical, I think, for California's future. And look, this bond isn't perfect, and it will not help the drought we're in today, but it will help 20 years from now when we have this, when this cycle comes around again.
I want to ask about the trees and the forest, because I have learned that we have really suffered tremendously here in North State and even Central State with wildfires. Interestingly, Southern California hasn't been hit as dramatically in 2014 with wildfires, but we are well over the average for acre destruction in terms of wildfires. I think maybe in your district, is Weed in your district?
Yes.
Yeah, Weed, which is kind of an interesting name, but Weed had a really dramatic fire recently, the Rim Fire of 2013. What's happening in terms of fire containment, fire prevention?
So two things.
Yeah.
First of all, we have a drought. That's
Right.
number one. Second, we've had 75 years of what I call the Smokey the Bear campaign.
Explain that. It's fascinating. You taught me that, and I want you to really tell our viewers more about it.
So we've extinguished fire that naturally happened by lightning and the Native American set fires before we settled here, and that thinned the forest out. They were low burning fires that moseyed around and basically took out the brush and small trees and allowed us to have large big trees. And so what's happened is we've stopped harvesting timber out of the forest and we've stopped fire. So we have all this growth in brush and trees, and that's a fuel source for the fire.
You described to me, maybe some of these fires shouldn't be extinguished. I mean, there is...
Only after you go in and open up that forest mechanically and allow it to let that fire get down. The canopy, when you have tree limbs touching each other, that's called the canopy. And when the fire burns across the top, not on the floor, it burns from tree to tree, you have to open that canopy up so that the fire actually stays on the floor like it naturally did. Then you can let fire burn. But you have to put it back in a state, because we've had 75 years of putting fires out and we have all that fuel there. And that's why they're so hot and intense. And then on top of that, when you get drought, the bugs come in and the bugs attack the tree, and the moisture in the tree is what creates the pit to push the bugs back out. And we don't have that moisture. They attack the tree dies, then
more fuel.
More fuel, right, and it gets hotter.
So what is North State doing to try to get a handle on this? I mean, this is a problem that may only get worse. I read statistics which suggest that the western states could face a 50 to 80% chance of continued drought for decades. I mean, this is serious.
So we need to go in and we need to mechanically remove that fuel out of there.
What does that mean mechanically?
Take in machinery, and they have actually machines that can cut the smaller trees down.
Okay.
And open that canopy up, and we can actually chip that material up and burn it in a cogeneration plant and generate electricity with it, and it's green energy.
Oh.
So we need to go in mechanically, but we need to get on a pace and scale that's really high, large amount of people doing it, a lot of it, because if not, we're going to continue to see hundreds of thousands of acres burn up.
And how does that happen? Is that a project that needs to be driven by the state, by the federal government, by counties?
Well, it's costly. I ran some legislation last year, AB 744, which allowed private landowners to harvest larger trees up to 24 inches without doing a timber harvest plan, which helps the cost. The cost is very high, but it's not as high as it is to fight fire.
Right, and what happens?
And the damage that it does to the environment is so much more different than when you have it opened up.
And so where are your colleagues on this issue? Because really it does take a lot of comprehension to understand the depth of the problem. I mean, to me, I would never say to let a fire burn, but you explained it to me.
Only after you thin it can you let a fire burn. So the ones that I've had in my district that I've taken out to the forest and explained what I want to do.
The fellow members?
They get it, yes. So my goal is to educate as many of the public as I can about how forestry is not only water retention, wildlife, it's the filter. The Sierras are the filter for the water source and the air source that we have for California. And so imagine your car with the filter so plugged up that the engine can't get air. That's the way our forest is right now, and it can't filter.
Do you expect movement on this issue?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this is a really interesting fact you might be interested in. And with AB 32, the global warming bill that was passed by the Schwarzenegger administration, we don't even calculate forest fires emissions in...
You told me that. You'll come back and tell us more about it? He is Brian Dahle. He's a member of the California Assembly. I'm Brad Pomerantz. This is California Edition.